Today I want to talk about what else, the general election. And I know this is a personal finance channel, but this is something that happens once every 5 years, and invariably it will affect our personal finance one way or another. So I just thought that I would want to share my thoughts on it. And this is not financial advice, this is not electoral advice. It's just me talking as a Singaporean who's going to vote in the upcoming election. And yeah, I just want to share my thoughts. Now, if you want personal finance updates instead, right, check out my Telegram because this is going to be on the general election and my thoughts about it. I think personal finance and politics are things that affect our lives in some way or another, and they are very, very linked together, even though it may not seem immediately obvious, right? I think personal finance is something that's very micro, very individual, whereas politics affect our lives on a more macro basis. Yeah, and I think having good people in government, having good policies, also help us achieve our individual goals much easier and faster. So yeah, like most people will tell you, right? It's time to vote wisely this Saturday. Yeah, but maybe to share a little bit of my background, right? I actually used to be a very pro-opposition person, as you might know from the title and thumbnail already. I volunteered with WP in 2011 when they won our unit. I was a polling agent back then. Polling agent is supposed to observe the electoral process and to make sure that there's no funny business going on. I remember the day I was on duty, it was I think a couple of days after George Hill made this video trying to appeal to young voters that he will be their voice in parliament. And at that time I was like, what, 22 years of age. And yeah, I look a lot younger then than I do now. And I think George Hill was at the booth and he saw me and he did a double take. And I will never forget that kind of expression that he wore on his face. My personal interpretation of it, and I don't know whether it's true or not, it was that he was a bit taken aback that someone as young as me was volunteering for WP. And yeah, especially after I guess he identified that young voters was going to swing the election for him. Yeah, then of course we know what happened. George Hill and his team lost. Workers' Party won a GRC for the first time. After that, I actually volunteered for 2013 Punggol East by-election as well. I was polling agent as well as I helped them go door to door to talk to the residents. Yeah, so those were very interesting experiences. We got to take photos with the WP MPs at an appreciation dinner after. Yeah, so that was really what my, I think, political awakening was at that time. Attended rallies and all with my friend. And over the years, I've noticed a shift in my ideology. The way I see it, I think when I was younger, things that the opposition stood for were a lot higher on my priority list. Things like having checks and balances, having a fairer system, having a co-driver, and moving towards a first world parliament. But as I grew older, I realized that those things steadily declined on my list of priorities. And perhaps it will make more sense if I really talk about my life so far and talk about specific incidents that made me really think that, hey, maybe we don't have such a bad system after all. Now, to give a little bit more background, I'm not sure whether I can be considered someone who has slipped through the cracks because I come from a middle class family, right? We are not rich, but neither will be poor. And I was in a secondary school and junior college that, some people might call elite, but I flopped at A levels, so I didn't have a degree and I came out to work, right? These things I have mentioned before on my YouTube channel, but in case you're new here, I was an insurance agent for about a year and a half, earning pretty decent amount until I realized that the products were crap, which is why I was earning quite a lot. Uh, yeah, and then I moved to an independent financial advisory firm to do the right thing for my clients, to sell policies that were low cost, cost effective, ethical for my clients. And then I was earning about $1,000 per month for about 3 years of my life. At the time, I also fell into depression, so I consulted with a psychiatrist at NUH, and I remember the bill coming up to about $30+ after subsidy. And even as someone who's earning $1,000 per month, $30 of course was not a small sum, but I thought, hey, this was pretty affordable. This government subsidy. And then I realized that because depression is considered a chronic illness, I could use my MediSave to pay for it. And it really struck me at that point of time that someone really had to think about this issue, right? That people with chronic illnesses, even mental illnesses, had to draw down from their MediSave, and therefore they implemented this measure. And as a young person back then, I really hated the idea of MediSave and having to contribute to MediSave. But because, through my part-time jobs, through my insurance agent stint, I had to set aside amount of money in my MediSave. And that now became useful when I needed funds for my medical bills. So it really made me wonder, what else am I really faulting the government for that is really entirely reasonable for them to do? And over the years, I just find myself more and more aligned with the incumbent party. And it's not to say that the opposition or WP is bad, right? It's just that I find that the PAP tends to have very good intention behind their policies, even though they can be very unpopular ones. So yeah, over the years, I feel like they have been unfairly criticized for a lot of things, and particularly this general elections. So I think I'll go through one or two hot topics, and then also talk about some of my worries and thoughts about this general election and the years that will come. The first issue is taxes, and the most hotly debated one is GST, right? And I really am a bit perplexed by the amount of criticism that the 9% GST has gathered. And people are saying that it's a regressive tax because as a percentage of total income, the poor will incur a lot more. But the way they have designed it, and they have repeatedly stated, is that there are GST vouchers that are given to lower income and middle class families, and everybody pays GST, but only the lower to middle income people will get GST vouchers, which makes it a more progressive system. So I think the criticism that it is a regressive tax is actually quite unfounded, because it benefits the lower income more than the higher income, which who don't get GST vouchers in return. And the higher income people, they tend to incur more GST on an absolute basis because they will buy more expensive things. Moreover, people like foreigners and tourists, they pay GST and they don't get any GST vouchers. Sure, tourists will get some GST refund, but not everything can be refunded. So I think it's a good way to collect a lot of taxes to fund social spending, like helping lower income families. So I really feel that the criticism against it is quite unfair. Of course, if you disagree, can you leave your comment, but do it in a civil manner below. So when it comes to taxation, I think there's a common saying in Singapore where the government will give you one chicken wing but take back one whole chicken. But as a lower income person last time, I feel that that's not true, right? As a lower income person, I definitely got more benefits than the tax I paid. In fact, I paid zero income tax last time. Perhaps I paid some GST. Yeah, and I got benefits in excess of whatever tax, whatever GST I was paying back then. And as a higher income person now, yes, definitely I am giving back the government a chicken when they only give me chicken wing. But I see that as a feature of a progressive tax system, and I am thankful to be in a position where I'm earning more and yeah, get taxed more. I guess that's just the way a progressive tax system works. So when people say government gives you a chicken wing and takes back a whole chicken, right? Is there any country that can actually give you entire chicken and only take in chicken wing? I don't think that make any financial sense lah. So I think that our view on taxation in Singapore can be very unfair against the current policy. Of course, can they do better, implement a little bit more wealth taxes? I do think so, right? Where I think that they are not doing so well is that there can be someone, a very rich person who has a lot of investments, and there's zero capital gains tax. Dividends are not taxed at the personal level. Yeah, and so this person can be getting millions of dollars each year tax free, whereas middle income people who rely on their jobs for a living actually pay quite high income taxes. Yeah, so I think that they should possibly look at introducing a little bit more wealth taxes, which they have been doing, right? They have the BSD, which is now 4% for high-end properties. They also have increased a little bit more, again, income tax at the higher end. But I think they can really explore at bringing back things like estate duty. Okay, again, they say that, it might affect the middle class, but, just put a threshold, like 10, 15 million or something like that. Okay, but in this regard, I feel that taxation-wise, they are not doing that evil job as most people like to portray. I feel that the GST, 9% GST is actually fine, and I guess I'll get framed for it. But again, phrase your disagreement in a civil manner in the comments below. The second hot issue is housing affordability, and I think that this is one area where I feel that we are actually not doing that badly in, considering the circumstances we are in, and that is we are a small city state with very limited land. And I feel that it's inevitable that housing in such a place is just going to be very, very expensive. And I really don't know where else in the world, in a major city, where residents of the city expect to own their housing. And I think we can also blame PAP for this, right? Because they are the ones that promoted home ownership, and they continue to promote it to this day. And therefore, I guess people had expectations to own their homes. I don't think it's a bad thing to promote. And in fact, I feel that affordability isn't that bad an issue in Singapore. In ULI Asia Pacific Home Attainability Index, Singapore ranks number one in terms of home price to median annual household income ratio because of HDBs. And even if you look at private property, we are still more affordable than many major cities. Now, the report may be a little bit iffy because they use household income, which can be skewed by the number of people in your household. But I recently helped a relative with their HDB paperwork, and I was actually quite amazed at how they could afford a HDB even at their relatively low incomes. But of course, they have the BTO, they have to wait a while, and it's not in the most prime of neighborhoods. But again, this is a reality of living in a small city state. So I don't think anyone has a magic bullet to say, oh, we can make affordable housing for everyone. It's just a reality of living in a land scarce Singapore. And if you don't fit into the traditional family mold, which I don't, right? I'm a single person, but I still managed to save up enough money to buy my little condo, maybe not in the most central of locations, maybe not the biggest one, in fact, it's very small. And it will just be a roof over my head, and I can sell it to unlock the capital to either buy a new property or to use for my retirement. Okay, and just to be perfectly clear, this was before the whole influencer thing, right? I was earning $1,000+ per month for a few years of my life, and I slowly increased my income to median salary before I managed to buy my condo. So I don't think it's that difficult a game to play, even if you're a single person that can't rely on BTO. So I really don't think that the housing situation in Singapore is that dire. Of course, are there people priced out of the market? I think definitely there will be, but again, there are grants, there are not so prime areas, and there are even rental HDBs for those who really need a roof over their head, but can't afford to buy. So I really don't think the housing situation in Singapore is that bad. Can it be improved? I think everything can be improved, but again, I don't think any party has a magic bullet to magically make everybody be able to afford housing. It's just not possible in a small city state like us. And again, I think government has to balance the interests of all stakeholders, including people who have bought before, right? In fact, this is not a new issue, right? I found this video of Harpreet Singh, right, WP's candidate for Punggol, in 1996, asking Mr. Lee Kuan Yew about housing affordability. Can you imagine? You rewind the clock 29 years ago, and there were people who were complaining about high cost of HDBs and private property. Now, I think Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's answer still holds true to this day, and that is that we live in a city where many people want to live in, and therefore prices are quite high. It is true 30 years ago, it is true now, and it'll be true 30 years later. And in light of the circumstances, I do think that home ownership is still an achievable goal for many Singaporeans, and that can't be said in a lot of major cities all over the world. Now, there are, of course, many other hot issues which I think the government has done better on some and worse in others, but I just don't have the time nor the energy to go through every single one for something that I'm not paid for. I'm not sponsored by government to say this, right? So I just end off by stating my worry for Singapore moving forward. And I just feel like it may be an erosion of a system that has worked well for us over the years. Some people might say it's for the better, but I personally feel that it might lead us down a slippery slope towards mediocrity. Because my view of an effective government is that they must be able to do two things. One, they must be able to consolidate power very well. And number two, they must be able to wield that power for the benefit of people. Now, throughout history, I think we have people who are able to consolidate power, but then they don't really wield it for the good of the people, right? This includes a lot of dictators, and people die under their charge. And then we have people who are, willing to use their powers for good. I think Obama is an example, but he wasn't really able to consolidate power and push through a lot of policies that he would have liked to do so. And I think that we are one of the rare systems where we actually have two, right? We have both in our government. So, and I think we have the closest form to this thing called benevolent absolutism, which is like a very wise emperor who has absolute power but uses the power in a very in a manner that's benevolent and good for his subjects. So is our government doing a 10-10 job right now? I don't think so, but I think it's at least a 7, if not a 7.5. And if we just keep trying to say, oh, we could do better, can go for 8, can go for even 9, and then we slowly vote in more people and erode their ability to consolidate power, I don't know. I just feel like whoever is the next government of the day, be it WP or someone else, will find it also difficult to fend off, its political rival. It could be PAP in opposition at that time. And then we just end up in a system where two parties are just vying for control, and they are always working in 5-year cycles, trying to secure the next election rather than focusing on the long-term thing, right? Already, I feel like PAP has to scramble to meet with, the different challenges that the opposition has posed this election. I really don't know how they can continue to do long-term planning when it seems like every 5 years they're going to lose one more GRC, one more GRC until they are no longer the dominant party in charge. That's my worry. Of course, it could be well unfounded. But that's what I worry. That there's a slow erosion over the next 10 to 20 years, and we no longer become an exceptional country, which I feel that we are, but it's definitely not something that we should take for granted. And anyway, yeah, thanks for watching to the end of the video, and you should check out my Telegram if you want personal finance updates to earn more from credit card and savings account, and also check out this video where I talk to the backholder pod about the general election. So see you in that video.